Okay, so I will be speaking on autism, otherwise known as autism spectrum disorder and many other nicknames, but I really apologize if my voice sounds breathy because I know my voice is just a little, exhausted, but I apologize if you can hear my parents. That is not my intention. But I have done a lot of research on autism, so that's what I'm going to speak on. So, autism began as childhood schizophrenia in the beginning of the research. It was described as childhood onset schizophrenia in kids because they knew that it was not the classic schizophrenia, so he had to make up a new term called childhood schizophrenia. And in the Nazi times, there was this Austrian man who lived in Germany, I assume. This Austrian scientist, and it is assumed that it is Hans Asperger who made the term Asperger's syndrome, and he will describe autistic people as unempathetic and psychopathic because they had their autism dominated. Uh, I mean, interest dominated conversations, and that's why he saw them as unempathetic, and that's why he created the term autistic psychopathy. And he also believed that autistic people were tools and that they were the best he had ever seen. And um yeah, but my personal opinion is I do not like that man, and I do not get why anybody will like him in general. And there is also other people, specifically women, which are great because women are, known as, incapable of being autistic, but that does not mean that the woman who invented those labels are autistic themselves. They just, wanted to make a autistic label due to having, for example, a daughter with autism. So there was this woman called uh, Heller, I think, which she had a daughter which had unusual behavior, behavioral unusual behavior, but she had a child like that, so she went to the government and was like, what is this that my daughter has? And she got denied. So what did she do? She created a whole new term for autism, and she created four types of new autism forms, which one of them is actually not new, as it is from Hans Asperger's, but those labels are um, Asperger's syndrome and CNN, child integrative disorder, I think, but it was also called Heller syndrome, and there was also PDDNOS, which was like pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, which was also made by her, which I I believe that she made it because she knew that there were a whole like color wheel, like tons of hues and nuances and stuff of autism. So she wanted to make this like uh, color wheel of autism and not just it being black and white, you know. And uh, what is my next? I also think there was Kenner syndrome, which was the fourth syndrome or disorder or whatever you want to call it. But Kenner also created, not autism, but the recognition of autism and the diagnosis of autism as Hans Asperger's. Dee did not like his label because Dee thought it was harmful, so Dee wanted to make new ones, even though Heller included that Asperger's syndrome term. But yeah, and it was highly believed that autism was only in men, which is a complete false stereotypes. Like, if you are a man, you can be more likely to have it, but that does not mean women cannot have it. Like, women can definitely have autism. Like, there are many women who have autism. They are just better at masking and hiding it. That's why. Sorry if I sound a little British. I'm just, I just fake a British accent once a while because it's funny. And then I get trapped in it, and then, it's not reversible in it. So, those were the significant historical figures of autism, and there are also, autistic figures in history which were believed to have autism, but nobody knew back then because nobody had any knowledge about autism. They probably just thought of him as weird or odd or strange or something. But yeah, people look back at those figures in history and you were like, these people might have some autism. And so the created these so people like Mozart, he would meow like wow. He will like meow, which can be seen as a weird thing, but I think it's hella funny. And when people say that autistic people can't have a sense of humor, I'm just like, girl, you must be lying. Like, there's no fucking way. But that brings me to my um next point. I also think Albert Einstein was, autistic because he had a severe speech delay, and he was also very smart, which not every autistic person is smart. There are also lower IQ autistic people, higher IQ autistic people, and average IQ autistic people, and that's fine because we can't control our IQ. But not to get too biased or anything, I'm gonna go to my next point. But yeah, I also want to talk about the term mental retardation, which it might be a little triggering for some autistic people to hear, but it is an important point in my, you know, information. And, mental retardation, it started as a term in the clinical field, the medical field, where it was used professionally and completely normal term, which just, describe a different mental functioning, or like a watered down or stupider mental functioning. Like, I'm not saying it's stupid, but to some people it can be considered stupid, and I do not mean that it is stupid, but I'm just saying, like, that's how it can be considered. Like, it could be considered a stunted, IQ, stunted functioning. But yeah, so this that label mental retardation was used as an adjective for autistic brains and their neurological condition. So, but it stopped having a clinical sense, and people started using it as synonymous for stupid, idiot, moron. Like, it's all those stereotypes like you're slow because you're autistic, you're repetitive because you're autistic, oh, you're just like a robot. Which I am not oh my god, I need to. This Marina reference, oh my. I'm sorry. Which brings me to my next point. There's also people who still use the terms Asperger's syndrome or SP, which is commonly used by medical professionals, even though it is removed from the DSM 5 GR. And it people who will be described as Asperger's, they are now just called as having autism level 1. And there are autistic people that can be squeamish, and I don't mean that in like a bad way. I'm just describing it how they're having it. Like, they don't like first person language, like, autistic person or person with autism, and that's nothing bad. Like, personally, as an autistic person, I do not care, but there are autistic people who care a lot about the language that you're using. And speaking about languages, us autistic people, we have our own language. Like, did you even know that? Like, we have this thing called masking, autism camouflaging, and it can also be called social survival strategy. My personal favorites are carbon copy or duplicate or fake personality, which is not an offense, but I simply think it's funny to say that, which it is when it is inherently when you copy neurotypical and elastic mannerisms to fit in more to this society that we have, which is so you know which is so small minded, small worlded, that they think that the world should only be catered to them. Like, that does not really make sense to me. Which, and there are many autistic people throughout history that have also gone through ABA therapy, which is electroshock therapy, and uh, they have to go through that for up to their whole life. Like, it is not a 2 second thing, babe. Like, they can be electrocuted for until they get that autism out of their body. Like, they will get electrocuted every time they do something autistic, and they have to do in neurotypical things or whatever to be more like the normal individual, instead of that strange individual. Oh my god, I think my sister just opened her door. What? She's just going to her bathroom, but which but back to that ABA therapy. There, you were electrocuted for being autistic, and it is still legal in all countries today. Like, it is not changed. And personally, I think they either got electrocuted through some chair or some wires, but whatever tool was used is still fucked up, and it shall not be done. Like, imagine having to go through lifelong torture just for just for how you were born. Just because your brain is wired differently, you have to go through all this torture. Like, this shit is wild, man. Like, what in the hell? And it's just like people these days, do you think neurotypical, neurodivergent is a spicy term for ADHD, autism, ADD, but it's really not that. It's an all inclusive term for every psychological function, like, schizophrenia, chronic anxiety, chronic depression, dissociative identity, whatever you have, if it impairs your brain and it turns your life upside down, it is neurodivergent. Like, oh, my sister just, came, came back into her room. Sorry. But, yeah, um, it is like, that, like, just because some person thinks of it as a spicy term for autism, ADD, ADHD, that does not mean it is. Like, it can be, but that's not all a neurodivergent person is. Like, a neurodivergent is much more. And neurotypical is like the normal person, which I don't know. I have my own critics about it. Like, who says neurotypical people are the majority? Like, there are so many people who have neurological conditions. So you just think, can neurotypical people really be the majority? And it's also, saying like you have to be unnormal to be neurodivergent. And there are all sorts of people, like everybody's brain works differently, so what is a neurotypical anyway? And there's just a lot of issues throughout history, even to today, in or society, on how we treat autism, and which comments or microaggressions we say to autistic people. And it's really important that you treat autistic people the same way as an unautistic person and will be treated, but meanwhile also keeping in mind their difficulties and their traits and stuff. But yeah, autism is a whole wide spectrum, and I personally have this theory that autism is not like a light switch, like you activate it on and off. Like, that's saying that autism is some sort of choice. I don't get it. I just think it's engraved into your brain. Like, that's just how your brain is made. And I believe that it is made up of many components. And like, it's made up of all these tiny little components and stuff. Like, it's really hard to just say that autism is this one thing, or it's all just black and white. Like, I guess if you take it from front value, you could say that it's bad social skills or repetitive behavior. But there are a lot of components to autism, and autism can affect your every move. Like, something as simple as walking can be different for an autistic person, or talking, or just existing in society. Like, there are so many traits about autism we do not know. Like, neuroscience does not cover all of these things that autism is about. So we cannot know. Also, um people normally think flashing lights is only disturbing to people with epilepsy, but I disagree with that, because it can also be disturbing and eye straining for autistic individuals or people in general with sensory processing disorders and stuff, but it's also just people in general. Like some people just don't like a bunch of flashing lights in front of their eyes. Like you get what I mean? You get what I'm hinting at? Yeah. But yeah, autism is just like that, and it is such a complex disorder or condition. Sorry for calling it a disorder. And people think it's just like mild autism, severe autism, and other stuff, which I personally don't believe, because I believe that takes away the spectrum part of it all. And I believe autism is such a diverse disorder. Like every autistic person is different. Like every autistic person behaves differently. Like we are not all black and white. Like there is not one way or a correct way to be autistic. It's all a big color wheel with all these nuances and hues and shades and tones. So autism can be really diverse. That's why it's called neuro. That's why it's a neurodiverse condition. Part of the neurodiverse. But yeah. um what is there more to autism? I think I've covered all my knowledge on autism, and I really wish I had more to say, but I have to say that in a different video, so stay tuned, my fellow autistics. But autism is not something shameful or a disease that needs to be cured or anything. It's just like how other people's brains work. Like I'm not saying that autistic people are just differently able, but they are disabled and they're just like you. We bleed too. Like autistic people bleed too. Like we are not emotionless. We have our psychological problems and emotional dysregulation. And autistic people can feel psychological issues heavily. Like autism normally doesn't come alone. It is normally comorbid. An autistic person can have only autism, but that's like extremely rare. So there could be a bunch of things that an autistic person could have, like schizophrenia, DID, chronic anxiety, just anxiety in general, and depression, and all those things mentioned in the DSM-5 TR. Like, I could mention so many things, but it will be too lengthy for this video, and I think you get what I'm hinting at, right? But anyways, by my autistic darlings and also neurotypical or allistic, oh, babes, even though y'all discriminate us, I will still say bye bye to y'all. Like, I love each and every one of y'all unconditionally. Like, that's why I'm going to say bye. Well, it is me, brutal, if I'm honest, going off.